The problems facing New Zealand's primary sector have been mounting at a rapid pace. So I think it's time for open hearts and open minds.
Now, my harimai, and welcome to Sarah's Country, extended to your part of the globe from ours here in Canterbury, New Zealand. Now, out of my left, out the window here, I can see the glowing Port Hills on the Banks Peninsula on a wonderful summer's evening. 27 degrees it was just earlier at 6 o'clock. I mean, it is December. And it is summer, but is it normal in here to stay? It does certainly make my blood boil when commentators throw but what about those methane polluting farmers into the climate change debate, without an ounce of understanding that farmers and growers are some of the most affected by the change in climate in which they have to operate. Now, here at Sarah's Country, we hope to provide a climate for you that is balmy enough to feel safe with knowledge, but the extremes that keeps you on your toes and navigating the matters that matter most to achieving that status of the world's most climate efficient food and fashion producer, an ambitious goal. I'm your host, Keri M. And my team behind the scenes extended from Tai Tapu near Christchurch to Fielding in the Manawatu have an in-depth newsroom and support around the stories that you have in every single edition of the show. To me, a dream come true, and to you, it's an absolute serving up on a plate of what you need to know and care about, especially in a climate of journalism that can be unpredictable. Now, today another moment in New Zealand's history as Prime Minister Ardern has declared, along with a majority in the House, a climate change emergency. Regardless of the word emergency, I know deeply from the guests that I speak to, and you get the chance to watch and listen to on this show on a daily basis, we live and breathe the effects of a warming climate, and our ability to operate is something that we discuss on a regular basis, the consequences of climate change. So announcing an emergency today does nothing more to acknowledge the work that is already underway and being done daily with the primary sectors joining forces with government and iwi Māori in a world first in a climate change partnership known as Hawaka Eka Noa, which supports farmers and growers to measure, manage and reduce emissions. It's interesting, quoted today, CEO from Dairy NZ said if all dairy producers were as efficient as New Zealand, more than half the global emissions from dairy could be removed. But we know we can be even better, and the dairy sector is 100% committed to that. It's an interesting environment if you're a farmer and grower in New Zealand, which is leading the change in so many ways, yet is bundled together in a global approach, which is historic in that. I think the thing is that it's hard to operate in an environment that you don't get instant gratification for if you don't know that you are doing right. And science is racing at the same pace and not overpassing at some point regulatorily, parts to the policy coming in. I mean, like say for instance, the Christchurch City Council, you get a star sticker, like when you're a child, on the quality of your recycling to try and improve recycling. What if we were to give instant gratification to our primary sector if they were already carbon neutral? And I know there is a lot of work going on, especially with Tutoi EnviroCare. So today, Prime Minister Ardern has committed this government to reducing a carbon neutral position in 5 years, 2025, so actually technically 4 years for the public sector to achieve that. I hope that blanket planting of pine trees on Palmu farms is not a part of that, and they are genuinely committed, as is the primary sector. On Sarah's Country today, our guests are individually doing their part towards a bigger good, whether it is eradicating the cattle disease M. bovis or helping farmers wrap their head around why banks are so obsessed with reducing dairy debt, to getting farmers out on a surfboard to rinse their minds of stress. So, with pleasure, I'd love to tell you who we have coming up on the show today. In a recent update, there are 9 confirmed cases of the cattle disease Mycoplasma bovis in Canterbury. So after 7:20, the Ministry for Primary Industries M. bovis Program Director Stuart Anderson is going to join the show to give us a bit of an update on why we're not going to classify this as an outbreak, a natural part of eradication of a disease. After 7:30, the Reserve Bank is continuing to keep a close eye on heavily indebted dairy farmers. NZAB, or New Zealand Agri Brokers, Scott Wishart, gives his advice moving forward and why the banks have become so obsessed with horticulture. To close the show, Surfing for Farmers founder Stephen Thomson will be joining us to explain why surfing has taken off amongst many farmers needing a break. But firstly, what does irrigation need to do to rid itself of that negative connotation? Irrigation New Zealand's chair, Keri Johnston, joins us to explain what they are going to do to change that conversation. This is Sarah's Country.
One of the first things you learn when you live out here
is where to shop for the things you need to live out here.
like electric fencing,
or horse feed,
or bee suits.
Children.
Chook food.
Do you want a couple of these?
Or something stylish to wear.
Not everyone's got stuff like this.
But at Farmlands we do, and then some.
So if you need anything to help your farm,
Grow, milk, dredge.
Rhea, come on in.
Because we're out here too.
Every morning, Kiwi farmers wake up to produce high quality food. Yet, every night, some Kiwi families are going to sleep hungry. Meet the Need is a charity founded by farmers, and it's here to change all that. We're about New Zealand farmers feeding New Zealand families by donating a small part of what we grow when we can. You can help us make sure no one in New Zealand goes to sleep hungry again. Visit meettheneed.org and follow us on social.
Welcome to Sarah's Country. If you've just joined us live, thank you so much for taking the time to tune in. And the theme of tonight is around this climate change emergency that Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern and the House majority have voted on. I mean, we're not the first country. I think we're 28 or 29 in the world to take this stance. And of course, my position is that the primary sector here in New Zealand is already on this mission to reduce our agricultural emissions. But, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Individually, what can we do? And I'd love to know if you're watching along live in the comments, share with us. I mean, it is the smallest, simplest things. I'm a proud hybrid owner. I've got one of those Mitsubishi Outlander hybrids, and they're freakily quiet. It's very weird, but really fuel efficient if you're not running on the thing. And you know, it's a little like feel good thing, and you can sit there and go, yeah, but by the time you've got the lithium battery and rah, rah, rah. But you've got to have some form of gratification that you are doing something. Another one is like those compostable rubbish bags. You know, they're compostable when you go to pick them up, and they so I've learnt that trick. But every little bit helps. And I mean, if I was in a farming scenario and I had that ability to completely offset what I was doing, yeah, but I'm not going to go out and buy carbon credits to offset it, you know, because to me, that doesn't seem like the right thing to do, because in the cycle of it, reduce should be at the absolute forefront of our mentality around this. And as a sector, I'm so proud in New Zealand of the position that we're taking. Now, our first guest for Sarah's Country tonight is from Irrigation New Zealand, as an organisation well positioned with key influencers and decision makers. But there are so many challenges ahead for the industry. We're joined now by Keri Johnston, the chair of Irrigation New Zealand. Kia ora and welcome to Sarah's Country, Keri. It's a privilege to have you on. And I mean, there has been a change and restructure, which has been really hard for Irrigation New Zealand, but necessary in moving forward. How is the organisation feeling at the moment with the move to Wellington and the new mandate?
Really, really good. I think to quote Jessie Chan, crisis does not change who you are, it reveals who you are. And, we were obviously hit pretty hard by the loss of our conference, so we needed to be sort of nimble and agile, and we acted quickly to embed change. And with our new Wellington base and our new CEO in place, and also recognising the importance of connecting our regions and collecting their views to inform our national position, which is the new role that Elizabeth Soul, our former chief executive, is doing. We're feeling pretty good. We're really looking forward to 2021.
Fantastic optimism, because at the end of the day, when we're talking about climate change as a theme for this evening, irrigation is an absolute lifeline going forward for so many. And the likes of Rupert Handyside yesterday we had on the show from the in the Wairarapa, putting in storage dams is becoming such a physical part of being able to have security over your farming future.
Yeah, it is. And for us, our big theme really is around water security. That security of water allows us to not only grow food without the threat of sort of drought or floods, but it also allows, us to supply community water supply, have environmental flows, to decrease the pressure on rivers at times of low flows. And it will be really a hugely important tool in meeting our climate change emissions reductions targets, and we really need to start having an adult conversation about water storage.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is about an adult conversation, or changing the conversation that has been around irrigation for so long. And the hardest part to do that is that factually it takes a lot to get your head around. How are we able to simplify the messages that irrigation is a positive done well?
I think there are some simple things we can be doing, as you've said, and one of those is things like our Know Your Catchment project, which is now a web-based platform where you can do exactly that. You can find out more about your catchment, and that data is live. You can see all of the things that are going on in that catchment, and that is about sort of educating and bringing everybody together in that sort of storytelling side of things. But I think too, it's also about opening up the conversations and perhaps changing the tact of them from what we have done in the past. Water is valued by all New Zealanders, but sometimes we come at it from different perspectives. And water and irrigation is for lives and livelihoods. And as we move towards sort of diversification of land use, and the environmental focus that we now have, we need to be able to have an open and adult conversation about how irrigation can integrate and support the environmental objectives, but also how storage and infrastructure can move reliance from our run-of-river states that we have had to date.
And of course, the move to Wellington is to be closer to the conversation when it comes to policy making. So what is the next steps with a sole Labour government, and we now know what we're dealing with, to be able to have those frank and honest conversations? Are you positive that we can achieve more in this next term than we did in the last?
Yeah, I am. And I think, we have had some very strong voices in the past that still link, irrigation to intensification and therefore poor water quality. But it is now about sort of moving that soundbite away from that. And we have really good relationships with all of the government officials and ministers at the moment. And it's building on that. And it's about building trust as well. They need to be able to trust us that we are going to be able to do what it is that we say we do.
I think the big untold story is the improvement in soil quality and water holding capacity and drought proofing. Are we able to get that story through?
Yes, I think we are, particularly the drought proofing side of things. You know, as you said today, with the big focus on climate change and climate change resilience, I think that is definitely a story and a message that we can further promote with this government.
Yeah. Oh, I'm really excited to follow. I mean, not only yourself as chair, Keri Johnston, as well as new incoming CEO Vanessa Winning, with Irrigation New Zealand's new chapter going into the future. It's had some incredible people at the helm over the previous chapters that has been Irrigation New Zealand, but it's a completely different future that we are facing, and more needs to be done, so in different directions as well. So really enjoying chatting to you. Thank you so much, Keri Johnston, the chair of Irrigation New Zealand. And of course, Annette Scott has got a story out in this week's Farmers Weekly titled Irrigation New Zealand Looking into the Future, and you can catch that at farmersweekly.co.nz, our strategic partners of Ceres Country, bringing that in-depth journalism to you. I'd love to know if you are watching it along live. Let me know. Is there something that you are doing, even if it is a small, tiny thing? Is it reusing, single-use plastic? Is it able to, get into solar on the farm? Is there anything little that you are doing? Because we do talk to some very interesting people here on Ceres Country that are trialling lots of different things in this race against time when it comes to climate change, and for some they may think that I am completely wrong, that this is not something that we need to be putting focus on. It's a natural part of an evolution. However, the reason why we're talking about that is that our Prime Minister today has declared a climate change emergency. So our goal here at Ceres Country is to continuously bring attention to the work the primary sector is already doing, and that the focus is real and there. Next on the show, there are 9 confirmed cases of Mycoplasma bovis in Canterbury, but we're being told not to panic. It is not an outbreak. We're going to find out more very shortly from Stuart Anderson, the Director of M bovis program from the Ministry for Primary Industries.
This is Ceres Country. Welcome to Ceres Country. If you've just joined us live, kia ora, and I understand with daylight saving there is so many things going on. To join in live, well done you, but of course we are broadcast across so many different platforms on podcast, and of course where majority of Ceres Country is consumed. And of course the topic of this evening is around of course the climate change emergency announcement from the government today. What are some of those things that you are doing? I'd love to know in the comments below, or even just to get you thinking. Is there anything little that you think that you could do? I mean, from a farming context, it's a complete and utter huge barrel of fish because of calculations and what's going on farm, etc., etc. Smallest little things, from these new compostable rubbish bags to hybrid cars, etc. Or what do you believe? I mean, we're all in this together, and it's great to see the public service getting in behind it, but what does that mean? Are they going to plant half of Palmu farms in trees to offset their own, or are they going to make a concerted effort? I'd love to know what you are thinking about this climate change emergency. 28 other countries have joined this. New Zealand is not the first, but today our Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern has come out and with the majority of the House supporting it.
Now we turn to M. bovis. We haven't talked about M. bovis for a wee while on Serious Country, but there has been a recent update and 9 confirmed cases in Canterbury. One of the properties in mid-Canterbury Ashburton region has been directly linked by animal movements to an infected property detected from the program's August bulk tank milk screening. Stuart Anderson, the director of MPI's M. bovis program, joins us now. Good evening, Stuart. Is this to be concerned, or is this part of the process of any form of eradication of a disease?
Good evening, Sarah. Yes, look, we've known there's more to do with the bovis eradication program. We are still confident that we're heading towards the tail end of finding the infected properties, but we did know and expect that we would find some more properties still, and that this spring was likely the time we would pick those up through, as you said, the bulk tank milk screening. It's a time when animals are under stress and the disease is more easily detectable. And also we have animals from 2018, born in 2018, that are now milking for the first time as well. And that goes back to the early stages of the program when the bovis effort first kicked off.
So when it comes to 9 active confirmed properties, I'd love to know what determines in your modelling an outbreak as opposed to part of what is an eradication process.
Yeah, sure. So look, yeah, we're not labelling this or considering it as an outbreak, and the reason for that is that the properties there initially 3 have been picked up in August through the bulk tank milk screening, and the others, one other in September, and then the others are all connected. So it's more of a cluster of properties, certainly in the Ashburton Canterbury region, and we can absolutely explain the connection between those properties. There's been animal movements between the properties, so it's contained in terms of we know how they have become infected through those movements. We haven't seen any properties come through that we can't connect, or in other parts of the country that we can't find a link or are more widespread.
Now, just from particularly parts of the early outbreak, and particularly in South Canterbury, there was fear-mongering of don't buy from the Temuka sale, etc., etc. What reassurance can you give to a nationwide store market that buying from this particular area of New Zealand is safe?
Yeah, so look, as I say, we are, we're actively working through the tracing, and the properties that we found are connected. Our bulk tank milk surveillance is doing exactly what we've set it up to do in terms of providing broad screening across the whole country from all the herds that supply milk, and that's what we wanted to do, is to find these detects. And also we have broad surveillance across the beef herd as well, both in meat processing plants and on farm as well. And that program hasn't found any infections to date. So across all of that, we do have that confidence that we're not dealing with something that's widespread. We haven't found a whole lot of other cases cropping up elsewhere and through the herd, through that screening that we're doing.
Have you seen an improvement in NAICH records to help your efforts?
Yeah, we have. And in the last, I think certainly the last 12, 18 months, there's been quite a shift in terms of the level of NAICH compliance and adherence, which is really great. There's still more to do, but there's definitely been an improvement. And, good NAICH records are really important and such a powerful tool for us in terms of both being able to trace and identify what's been moved where, and to move through so much quicker in terms of doing that work, and ultimately, getting the farmer out the other end of it and free of the M. bovis program.
And that definitely leads into my last question about the support around affected farmers. You say that things are smooth and they are well supported. Are you at a point in time now that we have come leaps and bounds from the start of this in terms of farmer welfare and well-being through this process?
Yeah, look, I think as a program, yes, we've made a lot of improvements and changes from certainly those early days of the program, where there were things that most definitely could have been done differently and better. So yes, there have been improvements. However, we know obviously that even when things go perfectly according to plan in terms of dealing with M. bovis, it's an incredibly stressful, emotional experience for a farmer and family to have to grapple with the possibility of having M. bovis and all that goes with that. So, like I say, even when it goes well and it goes according to plan, it's a stressful, traumatic experience, and we are always working as hard as we can to provide whatever support we can. And continually learning to keep improving and do the best we can to help farmers work through it.
Looking forward to the end of this eradication process, as long as it takes to get to that outcome, which is beneficial for all, but in the same time we have farmer wellbeing at the forefront of this entire process. Stuart Anderson, the M. bovis program director for MPI, and what a hell of a job, I must say. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on to Serious Country for a bit of an update there, with 9 new active cases in the Canterbury and Mid-Canterbury area, Ashburton area, my apologies. Of course, you can keep up to date on farmersweekly.co.nz, or of course you can subscribe to the weekly M. bovis updates on MPI's website. After the break, dairy farm debt remains high, but are farmers needing to be wary of the Reserve Bank or banks in general? We're going to hear a bit of an update on his opinion from Scott Wishart, Managing Director of NZAB. Up next here on Serious Country.
This is Serious Country.
Agri as a percentage of all loans for the banks reduced from an average of 14.5 down to 13. So what that really says is dairy is actually reducing as a component of risk for the banks. And against that, I suppose we're seeing home loans, or the non-productive sector, now at between 60 and 65% of the banks make up. So it's really interesting. I suppose that my take on it is that those farms that were in real trouble after the dairy downturn are still in real trouble. I think we're still seeing some situations that are really challenging to work our way through, and they're now becoming a higher proportion of the dairy book. And so I think that makes those metrics stand out a little bit. But, we are seeing, by and large, dairy farmers are reducing debt really quickly.
And this financial stability report of the Reserve Bank shows 3% of dairy farms are in default for 90 days or more. So this concern seems absurd.
Yeah, look, I mean, and I guess the default 90 days, it can mean a lot of things, but, fundamentally there are some dairy farms out there that are still really struggling to determine what to do. And it's still a really challenging market because, the stats I just read to you demonstrate that capital is leaving the agricultural sector still at a rapid rate of knots. And, what we need in order to solve some of these problems is the confidence to invest back into the sector, which will allow us to help support farmers to solve some of these problems, put a lid on some of, or put a floor rather on some of the prices we're seeing for land assets, and encourage farmers to invest not only in their own farms to meet environmental and performance gains, but also to help, fix some of these issues that are still hanging around.
But at the same time, overnight we've seen a lift in the GDT and whole milk powder up 5%. And we've had the likes of Conrad from Property Brokers on Serious Country in the past talking about the fact that the economics stack up. So is it just really a perception thing at the moment?
Yeah, totally. There's the yields from dairy farming, have never been stronger in my observation. It really just comes down to, what position farmers are in below the line, so how they can use their cash. And there's still just a number of farmers that have to use all of their cash from earnings to repay debt because of the leverage that they have. But operationally, the farms are performing very, very strongly. So I think what we see from here, and I was reading a report this morning from Westpac that suggested payouts of $7 for the next couple of years. It's just a great opportunity to continue to reduce debt. Those farmers that are reducing debt, if they have a banking sector that is confident enough to reinvest capital in behind those farmers, then we will start to see opportunities and we will start to see the market start to move forward. And that, I think, is the only way to solve some of these really deep-seated hard issues that are sticking around for the banks. Although, we're not in the situation we were in a couple of years ago where we were still trying to get our hands around what those problems were. I think everybody knows now, what's working and what isn't working. And I think everybody's faced their reality. There's been a few farms that maybe were on the cusp and they've revalued or reassessed the viability of those businesses. So, I think that's probably what's showing up in some of those bank stats as well, is just that there's a lot more reality being brought to the table.
It's not being brought to the table, though, in terms of dairy farms hitting the market. We're not seeing a flood of dairy listings, though.
No, we're not. And I think fundamentally it's because everybody is conscious that there just isn't the liquidity to actually take those farms through to sale. I think, in the early days it was a strategy of a lot of farmers after the dairy downturn to look at listing farms because, it kind of ticked a box for the bank to say, well, we're going to do something here. But there were hundreds of farms on the market with no buyers. And I think what that meant is that as much as it was something to consider, for a lot of farmers, it wasn't actually a real strategy. And the real strategy was to reposition their businesses and their operational models in order to try and find a way to get through until we see some confidence return. And so we've seen a lot of that.
Yeah, and Scott, from your previous rural banking career, what is the strategy from the bank to say, look, mortgagee is not an option. We need to wrap around support around this farmer and work our way through this, because effectively an indebted farmer is a dairy farm owned by the bank. So they've got a huge invested interest in seeing it come out the other side. How do they go about that rather than just beating them with a stick?
It really is an individual process. I think the first thing the bank's looking for is the confidence in the individuals. So where the bank has trust and confidence in the people who are on those farms, they're usually prepared to support a farmer-led strategy to solve the problem. You tend to see forced sales and other things primarily occur when either that trust is broken down or when those strategies have failed. I suspect that things like the Rural Debt Mediation Act have slowed down the processes in a lot of cases. There's now a few more steps in the middle. It's causing both farmers and bankers to pause and reflect on how they're engaging with each other through some of these tricky situations. So I think that's been positive. I think it's rather than a rush for a bank to solve a problem for themselves or a rush for a farmer to pretend there isn't a problem. I think it's brought a good process into the middle.
What about farmers taking a more cautious approach to investment when it's actually needed because of the bank's appetite to rule risk?
Yes, it's still an issue, something we see every day. If you don't have your own strategy, you will adopt others' strategies, and that is absolutely what we see. I mean, banks, as we know, they all have long-term or status quo metrics that they use to assess viability. If you don't have your own view of the market, the bank will use theirs. And, I still see that default position where the banks are saying, debt repayment over 20 years, thanks, is a great place to start. But obviously there's a lot of capital that needs to be invested in environmental compliance and in, changes to operational models to support that in a lot of cases. So we are going to need to see money reinvested back in these farms. And, we are continuously concerned about the lack of confidence to do that.
It's interesting because to me from the outside, it seems like it's a top-down direction of horticulture's hot, dairy's not. This is where you need to spend your money. And horticulture lending, led by the kiwi fruit industry, is growing at an annual rate of 15%. This latest financial stability report says. Can horticulture end up in the same scenario as dairy?
Oh, any sector can, Sarah, and I think that's, that is one of the things that you do have to be very careful of, is making investment decisions off the back of bank risk appetite settings. You're right, it's a way of rebalancing a portfolio from a bank's perspective. Look, the fundamentals of the horticulture sector are really strong, so I'm not surprised that there's a lot of appetite to invest there. But I think that those that are investing in that sector should and often do adopt the same processes that we run in dairy and sheep and beef, which is just be really clear about what your strategy is and how you're going to make your returns and how you're going to manage your risk. But make sure that you actually own and control that rather than just relying on the bank to have the right view of the sector.
As always, Scott Wishart, Managing Director of NZAB, bringing light to where the appetite is for our banks and how to navigate them. Of course, they have some fantastic reports on nzab.co.nz to be able to learn and understand what you need to do to get into a better position if you need to. Thank you so much for joining Serious Country. For more on this story, check out this week's Farmers Weekly on Nigel Sterling's story titled Dairy Debt Default Risk Remains High. Now, after the break, it is an initiative to get farmers off the farm and into the waves. Stephen Thomson will join us. He is the founder of Surfing for Farmers and talks about the successful organisation that is now spread around the country.
This is Sarah's Country.
Growing a better world takes courage. It takes foresight and vision. It's about dreaming big, then being brave enough to follow that dream through. To create a world where food is plentiful, soils are healthy, and rivers run crystal clear. A world where we grow more with less, where livestock is tended to with care. Energy is friend, not foe, and waste is a valuable resource. This is the world you're already shaping through imagination, innovation, and determination. So as small steps become huge leaps, you move boldly forward. And Rabobank is there beside you to help grow a better world together.
Really pleased we got into this. Thanks for your help, Dave.
It's a good idea, honey. Do you reckon it'll come out? Cover it in talcum powder, leave it 10 minutes, and you'll be fine. Good call, Dave.
Good call on getting those security cameras, Dave.
You caught a new one yet?
Yeah, kind of.
When you've got decisions to make, we'll be there to help you make the right call.
I'd go for those ones, Bob. Yeah, good call.
Did you choose these?
Oh, you know.
For great advice and insurance, talk to FMG.
Welcome to Serious Country. If you've just joined us live, I do have quite a number between my phone and my laptop here. Of course, every time we talk about M. bovis or Nate, the comments do go live, and unfortunately that interview with Stuart Anderson was pre-recorded, so I wasn't able to ask your questions. I do apologise, but we do our absolute best to get the best guests for you on the show, and sometimes they have other engagements between 7 and 8. You know, it was easy during lockdown. We knew that they were stuck at home, but now they go to functions and things like that. So we make sure that we record those interviews regardless to broadcast. So I do apologise, but I do need to read read them out and acknowledge them. Michael Ross wanted to know about the effort being put in to help farmers to be biosecure. Very important point, Michael, because it's very much about one thing to be the eradication, but the other about preventing it going into the future, not just in bovis, but other on-farm diseases as well. And Katie Milne, wonderful to see you in the comments, Katie, watching along live. When are you going to a program of surveillance blood testing random herds, she asks. I'll copy these questions across to MPI on your behalf, but if anyone knows a thing or two about the M. bovis eradication program, it will be our former president of Federated Farmers, Katie Milne. So interesting, Katie, thank you. I'll follow up that in the next discussion about surveillance blood testing random herds. And fantastic, of course, to see Uncle Doug in the comments as well. Doug Avery, he'll be sitting waiting for our next interview, I know, as well as, of course, he's with us every night. Greatest opportunities for New Zealand ag still inside the gate. And I think that was about the time we were just listening to Scott Wishart. I do need to say we are sorry about the technical glitch there with the top of the interview of Scott Wishart. All of the interviews that we have on Ceres Country are available in full on podcast and on video. You can go to cerescountry.com or, of course, Ceres Country. You can search and podcast. And they're available thanks to our awesome team in the UK. We feel very flash that we've got a team in the UK who turn it around overnight for you so that you can get that when you get up bright and early with the birds and the worms first thing in the morning. Now, born and bred on his parents' family farm in Gisborne of Ngāti Porou descent, it all came after watching a documentary called Resurface, and this was around helping heal American war veterans suffering post-traumatic stress disorder and how surfing was able to help them. The initiative aimed at helping improve mental health and well-being in New Zealand farmers in rural communities was that of our next guest, Stephen Thomson, who founded Surfing for Farmers and joins us now out of Gizzy. Thank you so much, Stephen, not only for joining us tonight, but what you've done, I know was a concept that has absolutely been embraced by rural communities across this country. It must be so rewarding. Can you please take our viewers and listeners back to where it all started from that moment for you, that pinnacle light bulb moment, watching that documentary going, you know what, I can do something here?
Oh yeah, kia ora, Sarah. Hey, yeah. I guess it's been a heck of a journey, but if you rewind it right back, it really did start just one sort of rainy sort of winter's day, and I guess Netflix was a bit new to me and whatnot, and yeah, literally just typed in surfing and to see what would come up, and this documentary called Resurface came up, and yeah, we watched it, and it was quite moving. They, take these American war soldiers who have PTSD and basically in some pretty dark places and pretty open about the fact that they wanted to commit suicide, and take them surfing and basically turn their lives around through surf therapy and saltwater therapy. And at the time, I thought, oh well, we could do something with that, and that was the sort of middle of winter, and then I did nothing. And then one day I was just driving back from a client's place in sort of the early spring, and I literally just rang, I think it might have been my local accountant, and I just said to him, I've got this idea, I need $1,000, and I'll tell you the rest later. And he's like, yeah, okay, done. And then I just carried on, and I had a half-hour drive, and probably by the time I got back to the office I sort of had $5,000, and by the end of the next day I had about $12,000 rattled up, and so I had the money nailed. And then I got hold of Gisborne board riders who had just been absolutely fantastic. Huge shout out to Flo and the crew there, and they got on board literally, and they supplied the wetsuits and the coaches and the surfboards. And then we got a date, and yeah, the first week of December 2018, Tuesday, basically the only thing that could go wrong would be that we had no farmers, and 25 turned up. And yeah, fast forward basically into our third summer now, and we're 16 locations this year. Yeah, so it's just gone gangbusters, really.
It's so incredible. I just love the story so much. And our editorial producer, Tessa Prentice, she is so behind it. She goes out to Sumner every Tuesday, but she told me I needed to mention to you that the Gore Bay one is very supported by farmers in North Canterbury and going gangbusters. Your connection to mental health and understanding deeply, not only your farming background, but you have worked as an agribusiness consultant before your time at Bailey's on the East Coast. What is it like, and why were you so genuinely concerned to actually take this forward into a concept?
Oh, I guess I've just seen it, like there's all sorts of reasons why guys can get bogged down, and there's financial issues, there's drought, there's staffing issues, there's guys who are damn near some of the best farmers you'll ever meet, but they still can't think they're doing it right, they just don't give themselves the pat on the back they deserve. And it's always the sort of little things that beat us up, and I've like you said, sort of been at the coalface, and in my past role, and I guess in my current role, sometimes you're dealing with a lot of guys who are under a lot of pressure, and you sort of it just literally you kind of see it all the time, and it's probably one thing we were never, or no, none of us are really ever taught to sort of work it out or understand what the sort of problems or how to recognise the problems are. But when I watched that documentary, I just felt that, I don't know, if we just gave the farmers an opportunity to get off the farm for a couple of hours once a week during the busiest time of the year, it might help them. And I guess we haven't really done a whole heap of data collection or anything, but the fact is they keep coming back, and people all around New Zealand have reached out and asked us to help them, so we've done it, so it must be working, I think. Yeah.
There's the thing, and to actually try and understand sometimes why it's working defeats the purpose of the fact that it's actually working, isn't it? But the thing is, what I've learned so much about, being a part of my sister Ali's Will to Live rural mental health, is that particularly guys, they don't want to talk, but if they go into the hills, go for a walk, go for a hunt, actually just get away, that in itself is therapy. Do you think that's why surfing has been that fact they don't have to talk, but they physically have to think about something else, which is getting up on a board and surviving that wave?
Yeah, and the thing with farming compared to other businesses is that you can kind of turn off the computer and leave it in the office and go home, and it's a bit harder in any business these days with technology and phones, and everything sort of follows you in your pocket a bit. But when you live on a farm, everything's right literally outside your back door, and you don't get away from the dramas. And some of the comments we got last year, last year was the first time there's probably a pretty serious drought that basically almost a whole generation of young up-and-coming farmers had seen. And really, that was quite eye-opening, because what it did was it meant that these guys could come down to surfing, a couple of hours in the water or whatever it is, clear the mind, sort of switch off. If they wanted to talk to people or whatever, they could. If they were just out there to catch a wave. We get farmers that just paddle out and just sit out the back and don't even almost try to catch a wave. They're just quite happy sitting there away from everything. But what it meant was that they actually can sort of, wash the sort of dust out of everything and get a little bit refreshed. And then the awesome thing is we have this great mix of people, and, here's a guy who's going through his first drought, being able to talk to a guy who's going through his 20th drought, and they've both got a clear mind, and they're both refreshed, and they can actually have a conversation that has some meaning, as opposed to a stressed out guy thinking he's listening but taking nothing in, and actually going home and not doing anything he was told because he didn't really take it in, or it just went in one ear and out the other because he couldn't focus. So it's all over the show what it does. But we've had comments like this is way better than sitting at home and looking out the window at having no feed. Just being able to get away from it. And really, at the end of the day, I don't like the surfing, and there's definitely science around salt water, but what we're doing is we're creating an opportunity for people to come down to an event that's a little bit different to what they normally do. And we're teaching them a habit, which is surfing, which they can do any time of the year. It's cheap to do. Anyone can do it. You just got to have a go. And, we've got boards that you could put the All Black front row on and it still won't sink. And so you don't have to be any good. You can be any size or shape. We'll get you up, we'll get you going, and we'll get you out there, and we'll make sure you go home absolutely grinning from ear to ear.
God, you've given me absolute confidence now to actually maybe go out with Tessa, because that was the thing, is you think, oh goodness, but even just to paddle out the back and just sit out there and just chill, I'd go out just for that alone. And I certainly know from my magnesium, Epsom salts in the bath, that it does. It scientifically, there is proven as a stress relief. Stephen, you must be, how rewarding is it for you personally just to notice that you created an idea and it's had a ripple effect like this?
Oh, yeah, look, it's pretty awesome. Like, at the end of the day, it was just an idea, and if I'd rung 2 or 3 of those first initial guys and asked for the money and they told me to shoot through, I probably would have flagged it then and there. So, I might have been the idea, but there's been 100 people carry it on and make sure it sort of has turned into what it is. And, like I said, without Gisborne board riders, we would have been absolutely screwed. Money's money, but you need people to do the doing, and that's what we've got now is just a nationwide group of volunteers, and that are absolutely awesome. And at the end of the day, I'm just trying to work as hard as I can to keep the ship steady, you might say. But yeah, right now I'm quite happy to give all the kudos to everyone that's helping us keep going.
Hey, Stephen, I'm a bit of an opportunist, which means basically when I get a really good guest on with an awesome background like yourself, I might actually take a bit of a sideline into another topic. So bear with me. But with the background serving on the Federated Farmers Committee, Poverty Bay A&P show, you've been a local agribusiness consultant, dealt with lots of Māori corporations and trusts on the East Coast, and now working for Bailey's as well as owning a horticulture orchard. How's that for a bio? How is Gisborne rural communities going, facing, the influx of trees, and how's the general rural community getting around the challenges ahead, just as a bit of a commentator on the area?
Yep. I guess from it, on the whole was pumping. Like, we've got our biggest issue right now in the region's a housing shortage, and a lot of that's because of how much the town is humming in a primary industry. And whether you love or hate pine trees, they do create jobs. But it's also the horticulture is humming, sheep and beef is humming. The region in itself is just, we're going gangbusters. We're really lucky, really. Like, at the end of the day, definitely COVID gave the town a bit of a shake-up, but relative to the others, we're going really good. And and that's basically due to our primary industry. And yes, probably sheep and beef and horticulture at the forefront of that, because as you saw during COVID, there was a lot of hurt in the forestry sector. Obviously, once the timber prices bailed out, the whole job just shut. Oh, did not say that. Shut down. But yeah, so no, we're going really well, and there's definitely sort of the challenges being carbon farming, and where does the price of carbon stop, and then obviously if every farm that goes to carbon doesn't actually create a lot of jobs long term. It sort of gets planted, gets pruned, gets thinned, and then that's it really. And then after that, it's a few guys with some clipboards doing some sort of management throughout the year and whatnot. But there's no jobs for logging truck drivers or harvesting crews or roading fellas. So yeah, it's
No, I think that
there's an underlying issue there. Yeah,
hey,
definitely.
Thank you so much for putting, I put you on the spot there, but I think ongoing as a commentator out of the Gisborne region, because you certainly have a handle on everything that's going on there. And sometimes it's just really nice to have a feel of, because as you just said, every region's really different. But the reason we have been talking to Stephen Thomson is the founder of Surfing for Farmers, in 2018, founding that, and such an incredible opportunity. So, of course, jump online if you have want to know where your local, he said 16 different areas that Surfing for Farmers is. Paul Harris, shout that man a beer. Go, Steve. We are all proud of your initiative. And Doug Avery, celebrate all your wins, even the small one. Wonderful, Steve. Oh, I love the audience on Serious Country. You guys are so supportive. It's absolutely incredible. It's all we have time for tonight, and I really appreciate you joining us, especially with daylight saving, and there's so many other things you can be doing out and about and enjoying it as we count down to summer. Now, I do need to say our last show will be the 16th of December, and we are going to take a well-deserved break. Sarah and Joel and our expanded team, Sarah and Joel particularly, we ramped up and over COVID and worked some incredible hours, so I am hanging out for a break, and we'll be back about mid-December. But in the meantime, that is all we have time for this week. And looking across at, as I said, Tessa, editorial producer on Serious Country, she is booking some incredible guests for next week. I think we're going to get really stuck into what's going on with wool. And some heavy-hitting names around that, as well as some great things happening here in Canterbury with collaboration finally starting to unfold, especially in the agri-tech sector. And One Southland farmer is taking a petition to government around the essential freshwater rules. We'll speak to him, as well as, of course, some very cool technology going on in terms of modelling virtually your farm maps to be able to test out all different types of land uses and work out what's great before you go ahead with them. Of course, on Serious Country, not only the matters that matter most, but we're here to talk about the future of farming food and fibre in Aotearoa, New Zealand. You can get in touch, sarah@seriouscountry.com. Please do. I love your emails coming in with suggestions for guests, as well as, of course, make sure you give us a subscribe on podcasts so it all downloads when you head off out of reception and you've got a whole bunch of content to listen to. It's been an absolute privilege being with you, and in the meantime, have a wonderful rest of your week, and good night and go well.
This is Serious Country.